Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for the Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Quick programming note, quite a few of you have emailed in the last few months and you would really like to be able to watch the Daily Critique on your iPad. So just want to let you know today that I'm going to be keeping the Daily Critiques to 10 minutes or shorter. Some days it'll mean that I'll break them up into two parts like I'm going to do today. When they're 10 minutes or shorter, we can upload them to our YouTube account. I'll be trying to do that on every Daily Critique moving forward, so that you will be able to, at the least, watch the Daily Critique on our YouTube account. There's a YouTube link that is posted with every video that, in fact, we are able to upload to our YouTube account. So just wanted to mention that today at the beginning of the video. This is another question-based critique today. The image is created by G, who is a beginning photographer from Illinois. Metadata Pentax K20D, effective focal length of 75 millimeters, ISO 400, and the rest of the metadata here is f1.8 and 1/45th of a second. I'm going to heavily paraphrase G's backstory here so we can talk about what our main subject is, and then we'll look at the questions. G says this image was shot at a wedding. You're looking at the bride here with makeup being applied. She says she shot a whole series of images on this scene, and most of them the bride is largely sharp. In this shot she ended up focusing on the thumb of the person who is applying the makeup, so that the vast majority of this image is out of focus. And something about the shift in focus here also created sort of a flare that didn't happen in the other images. G says she ended up getting a feeling from this image that she really liked, that was very dreamy, almost as if the bride is thinking about her future here. But she says that this was unintentional. All this happened unintentionally. That'll lead to the last question that G has about this shot, and we'll actually be getting into that in the second part of this two-part video. Let's look at the first questions. There are several questions here. One of the things that G asks, she says, how do I maximize the dreamy feel of this shot in post, finishing the image? The second question is, how should I handle the strong light on the profile of the bride, especially the blowout on the forehead? And then I'm paraphrasing here. The third question is a long question, but it's really all about all these color casts that are happening on the face of the bride. She says, number one, how can I get rid of this? And if I do get rid of this and the face starts to push more towards a natural skin tone, but I leave the color over here, would that help with the dreamy feeling? First three questions in a general sense are going to be answered with one post-processing move, and you've probably already been looking at my layer stack over here and you know where I'm going to go with this. I'm going to convert this image to black and white because I feel like going to black and white is going to help with all three of these first questions. Maximizing the dreamy feel, I feel like, will be helped by black and white, because so much of the time we get rid of the emotional baggage of color when we are talking about a shot that is of a person's face, where the idea of expression, gesture, and body language, where those concepts have the potential to drive a lot of feeling for the viewer. So much of the time color can get in front of whatever could be suggested by the gesture or the expression, and I really feel like that's happening here. Is out of the ordinary these colors are, and how that might push us away from the ordinary. A large part of the color here is this real strong pink or magenta, and for me that is a color idea that almost runs counter to this more contemplative, dreamy, envisioning the future feeling that G is going for. Magenta to me is a color that sits up on the surface of psychology and the surface of things. It's not that contemplative. If I wanted colors to push me in that direction, I would think more of colors that are connected to the earth, more natural pigments or mixed colors or in-between colors. And clearly if we go to black and white, we'll just get rid of that vibe from the pink. And so much of the time, black and white being immediately abstract, it encourages us on a physical level to move more towards the intrinsic ideas in a composition, like line, like shape, like texture, form. And on a psychological level, it does push us deeper into more contemplative states, and that's exactly what G says she's going for here. Other thing about black and white is that in a black and white file, a blowout or a specular highlight or white, it just doesn't have as much weight. In a color file, particularly when white is going to do what it's done here, push up against something that's darker. First of all, the white will drive contrast based on value, the difference between light and dark, and we're seeing that here. So this is the highest contrast area in the image from a value standpoint. And then in the color file, if we have a blowout, we'll end up with the absence of colors. So that becomes, from a conceptual standpoint, very contrasty. So much of the time in a color file, white has a double whammy effect in terms of being very contrasty and having a lot of visual weight. In black and white, this just will not hold as much power over the viewer. And clearly going to black and white is going to keep us out of the business of what could be a lot of complicated retouching to get rid of these color casts. When we look at the color casts, there are many different hues to the cast and many different values. We can see aspects of cyan and green and yellow and red and magenta, on and on and on. It'll be very, very difficult work. Black and white gets us out of that business. Here is my basic black and white conversion, and I converted to black and white same way I always convert to black and white, using the monochrome channels inside of Photoshop. In this case, I combined the red channel, some aspects of that, with the blue channel. I discarded the green channel. And how did I get those channels into my layer stack? I used an action right here. Allows me to just hit this button and very, very quickly bring all three black and white channels into my layer stack with layer mask. The ones I don't want, maybe I don't want any of them. I look at every color image previewed in black and white with the layer highlighted. I can just hit the delete button and get rid of those. But in fact, I used the red and the blue channel and combined those and made this my basic starting point for black and white. I think that you can see that there's a very different feeling getting rid of the color, and I really feel like the face of the bride is coming forward a lot more, and that I'm able to move further into this image and settle in the image in a way that the color is holding me out. Makes it very, very difficult to move in there. Once I get inside of this image, one of the things that happens in black and white is that this is still holding a lot of visual weight. Even though the color is gone, there's some real strong geometry. There's also some real strong sequencing of value changes, and boy, would I like to cut down on the weight of that. One really nice thing about shooting at a shallow depth of field is that in post-production image editing programs, pretty easy. Once something is blurred, to blur it even more. Very difficult to take something that's not blurred at all and blur it in a realistic way. So what I did was I came in and I used this layer right here to blur that background in a very dramatic way and to devalue it. Just create more of a feeling of just a dreamy space so that the face of the bride can come forward more. And to do that work, I just went to Filter, Blur, Lens Blur, and use that dialog box on a separate layer. I'm going to stop right there for part one of this two-part daily critique video. We'll finish up in part two. So a big thank you to G for sharing this image with us. Hope to see you in part two of this two-part daily critique video.